Mitten is with us this morning. Andy, good morning to you. How you doing?
Good morning.
So what's your assessment of what happened last night, really, in terms of Manchester United running into a bit of a buzzsaw?
Well, they were out by a far better team, with better tactics, with better players. United held their own in the first half, and I enjoyed that first half. It was so different to the Sevilla game a year ago, when Manchester United was so negative, when the crowd was so flat. The crowd was anything but flat last night. The PSG fans were magnificent. They were so loud throughout. But I was watching more what was going on the pitch, and I think the two substitutions didn't help United, losing Lingard and Martial, because one of the replacements, Alexis Sanchez, was just had another really poor game. He's underwhelmed so much since he joined just over a year ago. And I spoke to Juan Mata as I was leaving the ground, and not as a journalist, and he just said the first goal did us. And 7 minutes later, they scored an even better second goal. Angel Di Maria, of all people, someone who really underperformed when he played for Manchester United, put a ball in. But the movement which Kylian Mbappe, the speed in which he moved between the two defenders to score, it just put that horrible feeling in the stomach of every Manchester United fan. And I'm going to Paris on March the 6th, and I'm just glad it's a nice city, because I don't really think United are going through to the last eight. It was a reality check, it really was. And Ole Solskjaer, he said as much after the game. He said that that was the level that Manchester United were hoping to aim for. And I get all that, but then I contrast that with the fact that United's wage bill is actually higher than PSG's. But there's still some way to go. But that PSG team, that's been building since 2011. And United haven't been building anything. United's transfer strategy has been very haphazard, and there's been a lot of failures and flops. And the last few months have been really, really good under Ole Solskjaer. He's still got a huge amount of support, but he is also expected to get some results against bigger teams. If not PSG, then against Chelsea or against Liverpool in the upcoming matches. Yeah,
it was interesting you went to tactics. Well, on the list of differences between the teams, you went tactics, then players. Tactics came first. What would you do differently if you were Ole Solskjaer, knowing today what you know, what you didn't know yesterday?
Well, I'd like a player of the calibre of Verratti in midfield or Marquinhos. I think, like Juventus dominated against Old Trafford in October, PSG did exactly the same. They soaked up United's pressure, some really nice balls in from Ashley Young, and they limited United to counter-attacks. However, neither team in the first half had too many chances. They were both going at each other, but they were both defending really well. And the two central defenders for PSG, just like Juventus, with Chiellini and Bonucci, Thiago Silva was just a colossus. He was fantastic. And when you're playing against the best teams in the world, the top 4 or 5 teams in the world, they've got players like this, they've got partnerships like this that have taken time to form, and United just don't have that yet. They're just not at that level. And I looked at the PSG bench and I looked at the United bench, and Juan Mata's a lovely guy and he's a very, very good footballer, but he just isn't of the class of some of the PSG lads, and they were missing 2 of their very best players. Cavani is lethal, and Neymar is Neymar. He's one of the best free players in the world, but I'm pretty sure that Mbappe is on his way there. I watched him in Paris in October when he scored 4 goals in 13 minutes, and I was just aghast at what I was seeing, at how good he was. And last night, he was rolling the ball in central midfield. At one point, he pulled away from Victor Lindelof, and the Swede, he could just pull him back because he'd just been beaten. And Lindelof's a good player. He's been doing really well, but he's not of the class of Mbappe. Few people are, but it was a bit of a shock for United fans because there's a huge amount of optimism around Old Trafford before the game. Everyone's really been enjoying the football since December, but this was a reality check. And in hindsight, I'm not absolutely stunned by what I saw, but sometimes the heart rules ahead, and going into the game, I think a lot of United fans thought they'd win.
Yeah, everything you said there is true, Andy, especially in terms of the personnel that PSG, we now know, clearly just have a better squad and a better starting 11 in particular than Manchester United. So how much blame can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer actually take for last night's result?
Well, he's got to take some blame because he's the manager, and if he loses the next 10 games, he'll get an awful lot of blame. I don't think that's going to happen. Thomas Tuchel impressed me, actually. Speaking after the game, he was just flitting seamlessly between French and English, neither of which are his mother tongue. And he spoke about the tactics with an intensity, a sort of Guardiola-like style, whereas Solskjaer talks more of the togetherness of the team, and he says all the right things without saying too much. The most blunt thing he said last night was that it actually comes down to Alexis Sanchez, if Alexis Sanchez is going to improve. And that was as damning as you might find Solskjaer, because Sanchez is better paid than any PSG player, bar Neymar. And when you bring in a player of that calibre on, he should be making a difference. In fact, he should be starting the game because he's such a good player, and he's falling well short. And Pogba, I thought Pogba did all right. Solskjaer said he was United's best player. I wasn't too impressed by him, but he did have 2 or 3 players on him all the time, which is a compliment to him. His sending off was stupid, and that makes a difficult job even harder now, because United have got to go to Paris, and Solskjaer said if we get a goal at half-time and we're leading, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's got to say that. We've got to hope for that. And I would have probably said the same thing going to the game in Turin in November. United did actually win that. Can I see United doing the same thing in Paris? Not really. Not really. I'd say there's a 20% chance of it happening. What they've got to do now, they've got to finish in the top 4. They've got to continue the good form. And most of the players have been doing really well. And maybe get a good run in the FA Cup. They've already beaten Arsenal away. If they can get a result against Chelsea, that will put the team and the mood back up where it's been. And they've got to be aiming and building towards becoming one of the top 4 or top 8 teams in Europe, because as we've seen the last few years, they're well short of that level.
It's interesting what Solskjaer said, as you mentioned there, about Sanchez last night. What's your own feeling on that? Can he get back to that level? Because it certainly looks in the evidence of last night that he really is finished.
He's not as fast as he was, and I met him for the first time in 2011 when he joined Barcelona. I met him on the day that he signed, because I was at the training ground to interview Iniesta. And I knew at the time that United wanted him. And I also knew that his second choice was United and City was his third choice. But he went to Barca. You can't blame him for that. And he was a good player at Barca. He had a very simple job, which was get the ball to Lionel Messi. If you have to beat a man and do that. And he was an honest player. He trained very well. He worked very hard. And he's still doing that at Manchester United. But it's just not coming off for him. And he does look to be a player who is in decline. And it's frustrating to see. And sometimes players just don't work out at a club. Angel Di Maria is a perfect example. But Di Maria down tools by the March of his first season. He wasn't happy. His personal circumstances were not great. Sanchez, well, I mean, he's split from his long-term partner. That's not been ideal for him either. And he's not hugely popular in the dressing room. But he's working really hard. He really is professional. I do still think there's life left in that footballer. But whether we're going to see it at Manchester United, the more this goes on, the more the poor form goes on, the more I doubt it.
Andy, what odds do you put it at this point that Ole Solskjaer will be the manager over the summer and into next year?
If you really pushed me and said, will he be manager, yes or no, I'd say yes. But the decision has not been made yet, and it doesn't need to be made yet. And if he loses against Chelsea and then against Liverpool, the doubts will really surface and people will say, well, where's his experience? But if I'm judging him after the 12 games so far with 10 wins, 1 draw and 1 defeat, he's done exceptionally well. He's hugely popular. He's lifted the mood around the club incredibly, not just among the players and the fans, but among the staff as well. He has been a ray of light after the misery of Jose Mourinho, and I'd love him to become Manchester United manager. But he'll be judged by results. If United get beat 5-0 in Paris and get beat at home to Liverpool and get knocked out the FA Cup, his bank of credit will take some massive knocks, just as Jose Mourinho started a year ago. When Mourinho went into that Sevilla game, fans were happy with him. They were happy that he'd signed a new contract extension. And when he lost that with a really poor performance in both legs from United, that's when the doubt started. So what United need is a plan. They're looking for a director of football. They're going to appoint a director of football. That's all happening separately from whoever the next manager is going to be. And I'd love to think that the club has got a longer-term plan to use the vast resources that they've got, because they've not been using them to the best of their ability in recent years. United have been massively underperforming.
Yeah, makes sense to put a proper plan in place. Andy, great to have you with us this morning. Thanks a million.
Take care. Bye-bye.